Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. I am finally live with Gail, who writes as GB Williams. Thank you for bearing with us and coming back after a short break. I think we should have been on about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So thank you for rebooking with us and putting up with my nonsense. So introduce yourself, say hello, and I will pin us in the group.
Hello, everyone. I'm GB Williams, also known as Gail, and just about anything else I'll answer to, so don't worry about it. I've written 6 novels so far: the Locked trilogy, the Chair, and of the 2 Elaine Blake story, the latest of which is Play the Game. And that's really me.
So what does your writing day look like?
No such thing, because I have a husband and a daughter at home who both work shifts, so everything revolves around everybody else. But I will write for as long as I can, wherever I can. Mostly it's on the laptop, but also sort of notebooks and pens come in handy all the time. But I try to do most of my writing in the morning if I can drag myself out of bed, which is harder in these cold days than it is in the summer. But if I can drag myself out of bed, I like to work mornings and then maybe edit or read in the afternoon and try to get into a pattern that way.
Kaz beat me to it. She's already pinned us and tagged people, so thank you, Kaz. Hi. And she says hello to us. So without let's go right to the beginning. How did you get into writing? What was your path to publication? What was that thing that got you going?
I've always written, even when I was a little kid. I've still got notebooks full of stuff from when I was a sort of even pre-secondary school. But I've always written. And when I was younger, I did an awful lot of submissions to agents and just never really got anywhere. I did have an agent for a while, and then I thought, I haven't heard from this guy for about a year. Phoned up and found out he'd passed on and nobody had bothered to tell me. Yeah. After that, I'd got married and had a couple of kids, was doing my degree. Yeah, that's the interesting time in my life. I started my degree 8 months pregnant with my eldest, finished it 6 months pregnant with my youngest, while studying part-time and working full-time. So I have a fairly good time management skills. But I've always written. And then I think it was about 2016, I got put on notice of redundancy. So and I got lucky. Bloodhound picked me up. They did the first 2 of the Locked books. I'm still looking for an agent, so I've still got another book that's out on mission, and I'm just hoping that I can move on. Though at the moment I'm with Diamond Crime, and they've published the 2 Elaine Blake stories.
Now, before we got going, you did say to me, tell people that there's snow, just in case things go wrong. So I'm in Manchester, and there is snow. It's melting, but it's cold, and it looks like it's going to snow again. But on my screen then, you were breaking up. So I caught all of your answer, although it sounded a bit underwatery. So fingers crossed that we're actually okay here. So if anyone who's watching can let me know, is it just on my screen or is it a bit iffy everywhere? This is a good start, isn't it?
Well, it's cold here as well in old South Wales, but at the moment we have no snow. It's just cold, but that's no guarantee that the internet will stay connected. Though, to be fair, I'm with BT. It usually stays on. I have moved a bit forward so that I'm closer to the mic in case it's the mic thing.
Well, it seems fine now, so fingers crossed we'll be okay. So somebody said everywhere. Let me look. This is what I said when I need to look at who's commenting. Mills said, Leslie said everywhere. Mills said we both froze for a while, but we're working now. So fingers crossed. Oh, this is good fun.
If you missed anything, put it in the chat and I'll repeat it if I can remember what I said.
So with Elaine Blake, where did the idea for this come from? I love a spy novel.
Well, it was just that whole idea of how you could get to being middle-aged and never having done anything in your life and suddenly realise that nothing around you is the way that you thought it was. And it's just like, well, if you're an ordinary person, what happens when you're thrown into extraordinary circumstances? And so that's what I did with Elaine, to get her moving, basically, or else she just sat in that house constantly cleaning.
There's some scenes in it that I thought were brilliant, and this was in Breaking Free, book 1. And there's all these different things. Now, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'll talk about scenes without any context, and then people can just kind of pick it up as they read it. Mills loves your hair. I've said that. I love the purple.
Thank you.
Absolutely love it. There's a scene where Elaine is being watched in her house, but she doesn't know that she's being watched. There's some covert surveillance happening, and she's just sat really still, and people are kind of checking that it's actually working. Like, is she actually, is it frozen? Is she really, and she's really just sat that still for a really long time, and she really isn't this boring woman that you think she is, that's not a spoiler. That's kind of part of the intrigue of it.
I think chapter 2 starts with the statement, she is the most boring person in the world ever. And hopefully by that time you realise she's not.
But it gives you that intrigue, doesn't it, of, well, she's portraying herself as this. Who is she? Who is this woman? And that's what we can't really say, but that's what we're figuring out through the books. Because do you want to tell us a little bit about Breaking Free?
Okay, well, it starts with Elaine gets the news that her husband's actually dead. But in that news, she finds out that he's a spy, and they've been together for 25 years, and she had no idea. She thought he just worked for an IT company. So it's a bit, True Lies in that respect. But because that's all been found out, it's all been uncovered, she's also told that he had evidence that he hadn't passed on to his bosses. And the bosses now believe that that evidence is in her home. So, yeah, it's not much of a spoiler, but that is why she's got the surveillance in her home. The only thing is she doesn't know anything about it. She didn't even know her husband was a spy. And she is absolutely at her wit's end as well. I don't know anything about this. She actually says to them, go and search whatever you want, because she doesn't know. And it is almost as if she doesn't care, actually, at the beginning, because she doesn't know what's involved. She's all in a bit of shock. So then, obviously, from then on, she actually does find something, and it's what happens to her after that. And it's the snowball effect of everything that she uncovers. And it is a bit of an onion cake in that she's constantly taking layer after layer off. Not a lot of tears, surprisingly, however, but yeah, she's finding out a lot of stuff she just never knew about her husband, and more importantly, she's finding out a lot of stuff she never knew about herself.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it's a bit of a coming of age story for those of us who've already aged.
So when you were thinking about, did you plan these before you wrote them?
Yes, a little bit. Yeah. So I planned out where she was going to go and the different clues that she was going to find along the way. I did an awful lot of research about the locations, but I hope this isn't too much of a spoiler, because it does actually tell you in book 1. There is a cipher right at the end of book 1 that you may or may not have realised. And it does actually give the clue away. And it's basically, go and check your Queen titles. Because if you like Queen songs, there is a title of a Queen song in every single chapter. So I did a lot of figuring out how I could elbow these song titles into a spy novel, and that's actually how I started to put the books together.
I'm wondering how many of those are spotted now. See, now my brain's like trying to think back to different things that I read. But I couldn't. I won't kind of sit here. I could literally sit here and see what I can think, but I won't.
It is actually made. It's not actually made clear, but there is a discussion in book 2 about Queen songs. So it starts to become really obvious, but you're in book 2 by that point. Play the game. I wanted to call the first one I Want to Break Free, because it was originally called that as I was writing it, but it just sounded too long, and there are so many books already out there called I Want to Break Free, so hence the change of title. But yeah, if you like Queen, they're good books.
See, that's it. I'm not going to be able to unsee things once I think of it now. So how many books are you planning for this?
That's it, just the two of them.
Just the two?
Yeah.
Are you going to revisit any of the characters?
Not got any plans to at the moment, but there are, of course, a couple of characters that could come out. I haven't got any plans to do anything at the moment, but there's obvious choices with both Madison and with Ukto.
Yeah.
So yeah, but at the moment, the Elaine Blake story is done.
So you mentioned locations. Let's talk about the locations. I mean, so she's ended up in Paris. I mean, talk us through the different places that you sent her to.
Well, she starts off in Cardiff. So she ends up then going to London for a while and getting lost. And there's a key element actually happens in London, though you may not see it when you first read the book. And across from there, she's looking up for one of her foster sons. And her foster son happens to live in Paris. So she goes across to Paris trying to find him. I should say she's got 21 foster children in these two books, and they're all adults now. So it's a lot of contact with her foster children. Then she ends up in Paris, where she's desperately looking for this son, and he's he's been caught up with the people who the evidence is that if she finds the evidence, is evidence that those factions, and he's been caught up by them. So she goes and faces him in Paris. That does come to a conclusion. There is a result there, but it's not the end of the story, because it's not the end of what happens with her husband. So she has to go on and find out what happened to Jason, her husband. And so from there, she ends up in Geneva. I can't remember. I'm not sure if I'm going to get these in the right order, but I think
it doesn't matter about the order.
Geneva, Frankfurt, Berlin, Prague, Bratislava, Ankara, Samsung, and Sochi, and then the Black Sea. So hence the big yacht.
How many of them have you visited, and how many were research on places that you quite fancy visiting?
I've been to Paris quite a few times, and I've been to Germany, though not actually to Frankfurt. I've been to Cologne quite a few times, because I have a number of German friends that we go out and visit every now and then. But the rest was entirely research and Google, and thinking, Google Earth is fantastic if you're somebody who doesn't get to travel very often, because you can properly zoom in and look around. And you find these places then, like the Owl Park that I found. They go to it's basically just a big shopping mall in Bratislava, and I just did an awful lot of research on that, looking for photographs, looking for who's inside, who's not outside, do they have a food hall, all of those kind of weird things. And I was actually surprised by the proliferation of McDonald's signs that you see when you're going around and doing this stuff on Google Earth. You think that some Eastern Europeans would have better taste, frankly. But it's Google Earth and a lot of books, and just trying to find out what information I can, but also not trying to find out so much information that I'm doing a travel log, because that's not what I'm writing. It was enough.
So tell us about your so you were with Bloodhound first, and then you moved, sorry, I've forgotten the name of your publisher.
The current publisher is Diamond Crime.
Diamond Crime.
So it's what happened basically is the Locked series was a trilogy, and Bloodhound only signed up for 2. So they didn't want book 3, so I self-published book 3. Then I did a standalone, which because a friend of mine introduced me to Black Bee, who is a Welsh publisher, and it was a very Welsh piece. I actually sent the chair to Black Bee, and they're great. I still in contact, still work with with Black Bee Publishing. They published The Chair, but the Anne Blake story wasn't for them. So again, another friend recommended that I get in contact with Diamond Crime. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll send it to Diamond Crime, see what happens there. They came back and told me, oh, it's far too long, we can't publish that. And I said, oh well, there you go, just another rejection. And then a week later, I got a message saying, how do you feel about cutting one book in two? You know, you get to this part as one book and then do the rest of it in a second book. So I said, yeah, okay. So Diamond Crime have been really, really helpful. Steve Timmings, who's my editor, will not let me get away with anything. He's quite harsh, and I love it because it does actually make the books better. So, yeah, that's how I ended up. Personal recommendations.
It's a good path. So what are you writing now then? Are you working on something now, or have you pitched something?
I am. I'm both working on something and I'm pitching something. The thing that I am pitching at the moment, the first book is written, is a new series. It's called Queen of Cups, the book one, and it is a police procedural set in Merthyr Tydfil in South Wales.
Okay.
And
I've heard things about Merthyr.
Probably not good things. No, actually, Merthyr's all right. But one of my main characters is pagan, and he uses tarot, and he also hears voices of the dead. So it's quite an interesting mix. It's a real obvious mix of supernatural and police procedure. And his partner, he's not very open about what he is and what he does, except that his partner figures it out and challenges him and like gets to find out what is going on. And so it's basically the story. The first one is he starts at this particular Merthyr station. So that's out now with agents. Hopefully something will come with that. But currently some people may know that I have an alter ego called Abby Barden, who writes steampunk and fantasy. So I'm currently writing a werewolf story, police story, modern day, but with werewolves, for her under the Abby Barden name, which is completely speculative and it may never go anywhere, but I'm enjoying writing it while I'm writing it.
And that's the best bit, isn't it? You've got to enjoy it, because your readers aren't going to enjoy it if it's a chore for you.
No. I also have one other book completed, which is a post-apocalyptic fantasy, but Victoriana. That's been drafted, needs an awful lot of editing, and that again, I have an American publisher who tends to take those kind of things. So you might see a couple of things from Abby Barden next year.
Well, that's exciting. So you write in two different places, UK and US. What have you found the biggest differences are?
A lot of the US don't like the way that I write because I use a lot of swear words for the crime. There aren't that many.
The US market not big on swearing?
No, the US market is not big on swearing. So there's less of there's none of that actually in my my books. So you have to be much more careful how you write, what you write if you're going for the US market. I mean, you look at stuff like I've forgotten his name, Harlan Coben. Yeah, if you look at his stuff, Michael Connolly, they're big names. David Baldacci, they don't swear in their books, and I swear in a lot of mine. So that doesn't go down well in America. But also fantasy just sells better in the US than it does in the UK. I don't know why, but it does. So.
I often talk about a program called The Five, written by Harlan Coben, and it's a 10-part series, and it is fantastic. I can't actually think of the character names off the top of my head, which just shows how bad my memory's been. Because I've seen it several times. Yeah. And I absolutely love it. And there's just so much involved in it. And it's a brilliant series. A young boy goes missing. And then it's the family that are left behind, and how it kind of spreads through the community, and how the children that were with him, the teenagers, were with the young boy when he went missing, how their lives develop and how their friendships and their families develop.
Yeah.
And then kind of I won't say too much. I don't want to kind of spoil anything, but it's fantastic.
I have to be honest. I've never read Harlan, but I have read Michael Connelly, and he goes to some very dark places. So there's no holding back on that side of the kind of things I write. But you just have to then be a bit more watchful. I did have one reviewer who said, "Oh, used every swear word. It didn't need to use every swear word in the dictionary in one particular one of the Locked series." And I looked back and I was like, "There's hardly any swear words in there."
Oh, really?
But this person gave themselves a name, and I thought, yeah, if you're going to name yourself I won't give it because obviously you can then trace the review. But I think if you're going to name yourself that, you really shouldn't be reading books that are marketed as hard-boiled crime. So yeah, but you just got to take all reviews as they come. If someone's taken the time to read my book and the effort to leave a review, I'm grateful, even if it's a 1 star. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting though. The more I think about it, so the kind of violence that is okay in the US market, but not the swearing that goes with it. It's like banging your toe and saying, "Oh, sugar."
Yeah.
It's probably not what's going to come out of my mouth. So, sweary northerner. Quite well behaved actually these days, but maybe not if I stubbed my toe or stood on a Lego or a plug.
Well, to me, I'm trying to keep my books real. And, there are certain Anglo-Saxon 4-letter words that get bandied about quite readily, almost as if they're not swear words these days. But if you're talking about the criminal classes, they're not going to care about saving someone's blushes by using a swear word. And that's what I'm trying to reflect here. I'm trying to reflect what the reality is in this country and the way that things are. But it is a lesson to be learned, is to keep your swearing to a minimum if you want to get into the US market.
See, now it just made me think of I lived in Cyprus for a while, and their news is quite graphic, and I believe that American news can be as well. I'm just really kind of blown away by. I'd forgotten, I'll be honest, that they're not big on swearing and no swear words. I'd just not really given it that much thought.
Yeah, the other thing you don't mention in American ones is the porn industry. Yeah, it's so hypocritical. One of the biggest producers of porn, and you can't talk about it in crime books. So.
I've just read a book it's a fantastic book by Chris MacDonald, which is called Little Ghost, and it's a PI novel set in Denver, Colorado, set in a porn studio.
Wow.
So I'm wondering if Chris knows how brave he's been.
Very, very brave.
It's really good. It's an excellent book, but it really made me giggle. The more you get to know people, you get to know the authors and the personalities, and then you read something they've written and you think, oh my, okay.
Yeah, wasn't expecting that from you. Or the other one that you get sometimes is that is so what you would have said.
Have you had anything like that from people who've read your book that know you?
No, not a lot actually. It's always surprised me. Probably no friends. My family are distant from me and they don't read my books. But no, I don't think. Though I have to say, Elaine is probably. There's more of me in Elaine than of any other character that I've ever written.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
There are actually scenes in that have happened to me. Yeah.
That's disturbing.
Yeah. I won't tell you which one.
I'm going to say I won't ask you which ones.
I can. There is one I can tell you because it's such a stupid thing to do. I did do it. I was in France talking to a French woman, and I said, "Entschuldigen Sie, Anglaise," which is of course German.
German.
It's like, duh.
Easily done. Easily done. I know somebody who has done that.
Anglaise doesn't go down terribly well in Paris. Yeah.
What was the response that you got? Did you get a death glare?
Yeah. Yeah. And then to be fair, the woman I said it to did start talking in English rather, because I was asking for a ticket for for the metro, and she did start talking in English, but she just gave me this dirty look. And it wasn't until afterwards that my husband said to me, "You do realise you spoke to her in German, don't you?" So yeah, just had a complete idiot moment.
Right, some of the questions that we like to ask, and I don't ask this all the time, but I really wanted to ask you this. Did you act out any of the scenes as you were writing them? You know, just to make sure maybe some of the fight scenes, but they're quite intricate, some of the scenes. How did you
I can't
kind of
remember if I
work
do
that
or
out?
not. I do spend a lot of time making sure that you can actually do those things. If the fight scene you're talking about is the one that happens by the Eiffel Tower, no, I definitely didn't. But I did spend an awful lot of time thinking about the choreography, because one of the things that I learned there's a fight scene in Locked Up, which is the first of the Locked trilogy.
Okay.
When I first wrote that, I got the choreography wrong, and my editor picked up on it. So I learned from that if you're going to do a fight scene or an action scene, you've got to really think of the minutiae of what everybody is doing, each one at a time, and also think things like how long they would take, because it takes me much longer to describe what she does with the whistle and the pencil than it would actually take to do those things, and also to describe the kind of reactions that are happening. So I didn't act it out, but I did spend an awful lot of time, in my head, right, those characters are there, those characters are there, she's done that, he's done this, they're having that exchange, what are they doing at the same time, would there be time to close the gap in between? So I did spend an awful lot of time thinking about it, but no, I didn't act it out. I'm far too insular to do that.
I've been reading things and asked my husband to act things out with me, and he refuses. So I would be the person in the living room by myself, looking like I was doing some kind of bad martial arts.
Yeah. Well, I have, not on this one, but again for Locked In, which is the second of the Locked trilogy, it takes place in a heist gone wrong. So I did have lots of little bits of sticky papers and counters. I was thinking, right, if he moves there and she moves there, is she in the way for him to do that? And I did that with counters, but nothing in the Elaine Blake lot got acted out.
So you saying about counters has just made me think. We've got an author called Victoria Dowd, who we've interviewed several times, and she made a Lego kind of a diorama almost.
Wow.
And kind of used different bits for different books. And I thought that was genius. So the counters, that's really good, because it's just kind of, did you kind of write the names on so you knew which one was?
I put initials on the top and knew which one was which. And I had blue counters for the people who were actually caught the hostages, and I had red counters for the bad guys. So I did sort of mix and match, and I had I think I had a orange one for the male lead, and I can't remember what colour, probably purple, because obviously like purple, for the female lead, and was just moving them around and seeing how they would work, and trying to figure out, if you're in that situation, how many people can go through a door at one time? Can you have two people going through the door at one time, or does it have to be one at a time? And silly little things like that. But yeah, you spend an awful lot of time on minutiae when you're writing a book.
Mills has said she always wondered how authors worked out action scenes. It's really interesting. So that's the thing. Now I'm thinking how much effort people must put into things like how many people can go through the door at once. What happens if you're having a fight and one of you gets thrown up against a wall? Which bit of the person is hitting the wall? Where are you both going to end up? Is one of them going to fall? There's all kinds of things. I can see things in my head now.
Yeah, you do. You have to think about all of that stuff. And if you say someone's got punched, it far too often in movies, somebody gets punched once and that's it, they go down. This is not the way that people go down. That's why boxing matches last as long as they do. So you have to think, well, if you're going to hit him there, and if you want this character to like be unconscious, how are you really going to achieve that? Because in real life, it's a lot harder than you think to actually knock someone out. And the other thing, of course, is if you knock one character out too much, to knock someone out, you've actually caused them brain damage. And if you have one character keep being hit and keep being knocked out, at some point, they are going to have a neurological problem. And it's all those kind of things you have to think about, particularly when you're writing a series, because you don't want your main character to be that damaged or brain dead by the time you get to book 3.
So, have you got special skills and knowledge and expertise in different areas, or is it all research, and is it asking people?
It's mostly research. I was, before I got made redundant, which I have to say, happiest day of my life, but except for my marriage, of course, and having kids. But you know,
of course, yeah.
Before that, I was just a business analyst, and I would write databases, do system administration, and that kind of stuff. So it was all logical, and it was all like, well, okay, what's the minimum here I actually need to keep? How do I need to keep it? Does it relate to anything else? And in a way, it has been pointed out to me that in a way that is actually what you do as an author and as a reader. You get that little snippet of information over here, you've got a little snippet of information there, and somehow you've got to tie it all together and make it work. But that's the only skill that I really bring to it as far as that is concerned. I just have a really good imagination, and I actually pay attention when I go to things like forensics conversations and seminars and that kind of stuff. And I listen when my police friends talk. I'm very lucky in that I live opposite a police officer, and every now and then he gets a knock on the door. Oh, can you tell me what would happen in this case in the police and stuff like that? But I also read a lot of police procedurals. I do read a lot of police procedural books, but I read the actual police manuals as well if I can get my hands on them. So it is all study, and I love shows like Dr. G, Medicine Woman.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It's an American coroner.
Okay.
So she goes through a lot of cases. I've read quite a few of, I think it's Dr. I've forgotten his name, Pyle, I think it is, surname. And he actually writes book that says to authors, an author will write into him, and he said, well, what would happen in this situation? And he gives the medical response as to what's happening and how you can do stuff. So I read his books. I read quite a few forensics for dummies type books. I really look at an awful lot of pictures that I really wish afterwards I hadn't watched and looked at. But yeah, it's just a matter of going through and doing your research. Again, it's figuring out what you actually need to know. In one of the books that I've got, I've had to research. It's not been published yet, but I have had to research the effects of chlorine gas on the internal organs, because it makes them look different. It's one of the ways that they can actually say that this person died of chlorine inhalation, because it has an effect on the internal organs. But again, I'm writing police procedurals, not something like Silent Witness, where it's all about the pathology. But I need to know enough about pathology to make crime work. So sometimes what I do is I look at these old case books and said, this is how somebody died, and this is how they concluded that was how somebody died. And then I'll try and figure out if I can use that as a murder.
See, now this might be a bit of an unfair question. So if you've not got an answer for it, we'll just move on. But is there anything, because you've read so many forensic things now, is there anything that, because we see so many things on TV that we think, well, I don't know about everybody, but I often think if I've seen something for years, I'll think that was true. And then one day somebody will say, no, that's not how it would happen at all, not even remotely. Have you found things like that, things that have surprised you?
Not from research. What I find is from the research will correct things I've seen on television. So you often get things on TV that the absolute classic is actual crime scene management. Your lead detective. I was watching Vera the other day. I think she stopped to put on shoe covers, and that was about it. And all the rest of the hair's still free. His hair was still free. There was none of the protective overalls and stuff. And you see it on crime series after crime series that they just walk into the area. The chances are they wouldn't be allowed to walk into the area anyway. And even if they did, they'd have to go in suited and booted and just everything covered. So that was quite a lot. Again, it's the police procedure that I tend to find is wrong. But then you realise once you know what the police procedure is, and obviously there's so many good advisors out there like Graham Bartlett and all the others. Yeah. It's like, if I actually follow all of that, you're never going to read my book. So you do have to just shorten it and hope and make it realistic enough. But it's been more of a thing on watching and reading crime and then looking at the true police procedures, that surprised me at how many things that I was getting wrong and how many things authors and writers on TV get wrong still constantly. So
there is that thing, isn't there, that you can't really get away with things in crime fiction books the way you can on TV. So you're saying about kind of Brenda Blethyn, Vera putting her booties on. Kate Bendelow is an author, and she's written a fantastic book called The Real CSI, which I thought I'd be able to reach and show you, but I can't.
No, I know Kate. She's great.
Yeah, she's brilliant, and she absolutely loves it when people walk into crime scenes and pick things up with a pen.
I can imagine her just going there like, oh my God. And I like the not using evidence bags. The number of times you see evidence bags not used, it's just, if I know that it's wrong, every police officer and CSI in the country must just shake their head in horror when they see that happening.
Kaz wants to know, let me go back up a bit. So Mills was agreeing it is about connecting the dots. So when you were talking about writing different scenes and thinking about that happening there and that happening there and how it all gets connected, she gets really ranty about lack of forensic awareness on TV. Now, I've got to admit, a lot of the time I can just kind of let things wash over me. If I know I'm not reading a factual thing, but sometimes things really irritate me. I suppose it depends what mood I'm in as well and what I've been reading and who I've been talking to.
Oh, my husband is forever glaring at me because they wouldn't do this, they wouldn't do that. Like you get that look across from and just like, yeah, I'm trying to enjoy the show here. Yeah.
I actually had a chat with Graham Bartlett about Line of Duty. He won't watch it.
No, I can imagine. I've only watched series 1 of Line of Duty, but mostly because with 2 people working shifts, watching anything is just a commitment that I can't make half the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed series 1, but I just couldn't keep going with that one.
I have kept going, and I think most of the time I can accept that it's TV. I don't need to overthink it. But yeah, sometimes things just really, I can't think of an example of something that irritates me. But
I tell you what, it's the little things that I find. There's a film. It's a Michelle Moynihan film. I think it's something like it's not GoldenEye because that's the Bond one, but it's like Eye in the Sky or something. And there's all this horrendous tech that does not work in real life, and they're being there's surveillance all across the world, and there's bombs being set off. And the thing that really annoyed me, they got some CCTV footage, and they actually cleaned it up until it was perfect imagery. And I'm thinking, you're not going to get that out of CCTV. You can't go that way. And it just for all of the fantastical stuff that was in the movie, I just like, that was the one thing that absolutely lost believability to me.
It's funny actually that you bring up cameras, because one thing that does irk me is the camera quality these days is so good. Grainy images really bother me, because I think,
but most
protect your business with a decent camera. Why would it be?
Most of the time, it's not that good. One of the jobs,
but it really irritates me, because surely it should be now.
But it's not, because you've got to think that we've been putting CCTV cameras on our buildings and our businesses for many, many years, and a lot of them aren't that good. I mean, we have got we've got one of those ones at the front of the house that if somebody moves, it triggers. And to be fair, we only got it last year, and it is really good quality. But I've worked in so many businesses where those cameras were 5-10 years old.
See, that's the thing. That's what I mean. Surely by now replace the old camera. If what you're protecting is your business, replace it. Spend that little bit of money on something, even on a Ring doorbell. You know what? Or one of the. There are other brands. There are other non-brands. I'm not recommending Ring.
Video doorbells.
Yeah.
They do. But they're fine, but you find businesses just don't put their money there, because, to be honest, even police officers will tell you this. Just having something that looks like a video camera is as much deterrent as having a working video camera. So you don't actually. There's not necessarily a business case for improving things that far.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, Sam, but the reality is there's lots of grainy footage out there.
I'm sure there is, but it bugs me. have some decent footage. I read a book, Louisa Scar's book, Seen to be Believed, and it started with a really good quality camera image, and it was a house with different cameras inside, and I was like, oh, somebody's used a really clear camera. And then it helped them to find who the guy was. They had no idea who he was, but it helped them to find him.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's good. I like the fact that somebody's done something different. Wouldn't bother me in a book. Bothers me on TV.
Yeah,
I can let it go in a book.
But there are still limits to how many pixels you can see, and you when you're talking about that many pixels and somebody that you're probably filming 10, 15 feet away, you're just not going to get that clear image of their face that you get on TV, and that bothers me. It's not like Blade Runner where you can go in and get every little pixel out.
I like Blade Runner. Right, where are we up to? Kaz has said, what have been your favourite reads of the year so far? I was going to ask this kind of a bit later on, but it's a really hard question. Do you have a book of the year?
I haven't got down to a book of the year yet because I haven't looked that way. But I was doing a podcast behind the yellow tape a couple of 3 weeks ago now, and I did pick out my I think it was 8 favourite books of the year, and they were Sleepless by Louise Mumford.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Oh, it's great. And The Safe House, because I read The Safe House this year as well, which is a second one. Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Well worth it. Then there was The Unwanted Dead by Chris Lloyd, which I didn't want to read that first because it's based in France during the Nazi occupation, and I was really worried that I wasn't going to enjoy it, and I loved it to bits. Absolutely loved that. I've also read The Venetian Game by Philip Gwyn Jones. Again, wasn't sure I was going to like it, but it got a great cat. I love cats in crime. So I really love that. The other ones I've liked are Amongst Our Weapons by Ben Aranovich, because I really like that crossover. I love all of James Oswald's stuff. I've just recently finished. Oh, good God, I've forgotten the title. But it's the third.
I'm impressed you've remembered this many off the top of your head, so you're allowed to forget a title.
Yeah, but anything James Oswald, I love his work. There's just such a wonderful plethora of stuff out there. I've been reading, again, it's fantasy, but I've been reading a lot of The Time Police by Jodie Taylor. And the nice thing about those is you're laughing out loud as you're reading them as well. Because there's, you get to a point where there's only so much gritty reality you can deal with, and you need a good laugh. But yeah, and Kareem Rahman's The East of Hounslow and the J series is the trilogy, I think it is. They are really good. East of Hounslow, Homegrown Hero, and I can't remember the third one, but those are well worth reading. But I haven't picked my favourite of the year, mostly because I'm still reading.
We recorded it the other day. I'm not quite sure when it's being shared, but so I can't tell you anything that's on mine yet because it's not out yet. So I'm starting again now for the end of next year, and it just gets harder and harder. How we picked 10 books.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
It's insane. How many books do you reckon roughly you've managed to read a year?
I can tell you exactly 50. I keep a count.
All right, okay.
I keep a count on Goodreads. I do set a challenge for myself, which is every year it's 48 books, so it's a book a week. But this year I've read 50. I'm in the middle of 2 others at the moment. So if you can find me on Goodreads, you can actually find out what I'm reading, because they're all on the one account. And it's a huge different range of fiction, non-fiction, and there's quite a lot of crime. There's quite a lot of fantasy in there as well. But even the fantasy stuff that I like tends to be crime oriented as well. So there's all manner of stuff on my book list. But yeah, find me on Goodreads and you can soon find out what I've been reading.
I'll be going off in a nosy afterwards before I watch the MasterChef final. That's I think it's on at about 8 o'clock, 8:30. I'm not sure. 9 o'clock.
10 to 9. Well, it starts at 10 to 8, but on the +1 side, 10 to 9. I shall be down watching Miss Scarlet and the Duke, which is a Victorian private detective story.
I have not heard of this. Tell me more.
It's on Drama. It's Miss Scarlet is a young woman in Victorian England. Her father, who was a private detective, has passed on, and she's unmarried, so she takes over his business. And of course, there's an awful lot of stigma about that because she's a woman, and women aren't allowed to do that kind of thing in Victorian society. And the Duke is actually, I think he's an inspector, Inspector Wellington, William Wellington. And they call him, obviously, they call him the Duke because he's Duke Wellington.
Yeah.
And he's the police officer that's constantly trying to get her to not investigate stuff because it's dangerous. But it's a good romp, and she always investigates, and she always gets in trouble. And, usually she and him work really well together, and they will rescue one another from different situations. So it's a really good, relaxing thing to go and watch and enjoy.
I will recommend, if anyone has got Netflix, I would recommend Enola Holmes.
I love it. Yeah.
So good. I didn't really know what it was. I'd seen a couple of kind of stills of it, just kind of not even adverts, just like a poster sort of thing.
Yeah.
And didn't really know what it was. Didn't make the connection in my head with Holmes.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I mean, the genre
it's
that I work within,
in the title.
It should literally have been the first thing that I thought, but it wasn't. So for anyone who's a bit, thick like I was, Enola Holmes is Sherlock Holmes's younger sister. And there are books, and once I've finished watching all of the films, there's 2 out at the moment, I will read the books, but I can't read them now because then I've already seen 2 of the films, so I can't do it the other way around.
Yeah, no, I
know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm one of these people. I tend to stick in one medium. So, for example, I love Peter Robinson's books, the Inspector Banks. Could not even bring myself to watch the TV series because to me, Stephen Tomlinson is not Inspector Banks, and it just never be the Inspector Banks in my head. Therefore, I don't watch it. But if I watch something on telly, I very rarely then go and read the book.
Yeah, I find it very difficult to cross over. I don't watch the Tom Thorne series on, I think it was on BBC, I'm not sure, which is by Mark Billingham, because I'm still reading the Tom Thorne books.
Well,
so I can't watch it.
Yeah. I read Sleepyhead many, many years ago. But I actually have downstairs on my DVD shelf Sleepyhead and whatever the second one is. And I've never watched them. So I will get around to
I'm looking, I can't think which one they're all behind me, but they're not in the right order.
Oh, sort your bookcase out, girl.
I know. That is the plan. I'm kind of in the middle of having a revamp of the office, but the problem is
I can see the murder
more
room
and more
behind
books.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't work. There's an author called Mike Craven, M.W. Craven, who says to me, "Sam, sort your ratty bookshelves out." I'm like, I will. I'm trying, but I'm busy.
Every time I get a new bookshelf, which my husband keeps telling me we can't have any more bookshelves in the house, I just fill it up. We did a trip to 66 books in Hemel Hempstead last month, and my daughter and I came back with 81 books between us that we had to house. So, yeah.
It's easily done. I don't think my husband would ever say to me, "No more bookshelves." I don't think he'd ever. He might think it. I don't think he'd ever say it.
Oh no, my husband's got to the stage of no more bookshelves. There's no more room for bookshelves. Last year we did have a clear out, and I gave over 1,000 books to libraries and to secondhand bookshops. So,
yeah, I do need to have a sort out, but it's really hard. I don't want to.
And I do regret.
I tend to just buy people books that I've enjoyed rather than passing the book on.
Yeah, I do regret some of the books I got rid of. Actually, there were some series that I just thought, no, I wish I'd kept hold of those now. But yeah, I've read them. I've still got the memories of them.
Mills said she liked Line of Duty. Well, mostly she likes Kate Fleming and Hastings and the wee donkey. She's also said we've got a 6-camera setup in the cafe, about £100, and while they're good, I will have a look at that. Yeah, you don't want to get me off on another camera run. I just think, I don't know. It's been used so much, I think, is the thing, isn't it? So tricky. Let's talk about the future for you. So you're obviously okay with writing standalones and series, because I do find and Kaz would probably agree, we do find that some authors will either do standalones or they'll do series. They don't really like to do both. Do you have a preference, or is it just
No,
whatever you're feeling at the time?
it's actually about the character. I didn't intend to write Charlie Bell as a trilogy.
Okay.
But what happened, he started out, and I think I've mentioned this a few times in different interviews, he started out as a 200-word character sketch. And I thought, oh, I can make a short story out of this. And then I was thinking, no, there's more than a short story here. I can make a novella. And I thought, no, I'm going to write a book. So I wrote the book, and I thought, he's not finished yet. So I wrote another book. And it's like, yeah, this isn't over yet. So I wrote the third book. And even though the trilogy is out, I've got at least 2 more book ideas for him. But Elaine Blake and also the characters in the chair, who are Cobb and Branwen, their story is done because that's what their story was.
Yeah.
So it's all down to who the characters are and what they need to do. So it's, yeah, that Play the Game and Breaking Free, they were supposed to be one. They were originally one book, as I say, until Diamond Crime asked me to split them in 2. So yeah, it's about the story, it's about the character, it's about the journey they're on, and is their journey worth continuing to take? But it's also a question of, do you want to actually spend the rest of your life with 1 or 2 characters? So, for example, I have started this supernatural one, the Queen of Cups, and there are probably 11 books in that. Whether I get to write them will depend on whether I find an agent and then whether or not I find a publisher. But it's a lot of commitment if you're going to write a very, very long series. And of course, lots of people do that very successfully. Yeah, look at Ian Rankin with Rebus, look at Mark Billingham with Thorn. That's absolutely fine and it's wonderful. And don't get me wrong, very jealous of those careers. I would love to have a career like that. But sometimes I just want to go off and write something completely different. So like I'm currently writing about werewolves for no apparent reason. So it's just an idea popped into my head, so I'm writing it. But I don't know. I've spoken to writers about this. Some of them love series, as you say. I know one writer who said that they will never ever write a series because once they've told the story once, they don't want to know about those people ever again, which is odd to me because I want to know those people until I get them into the right place. But yeah, it is all a matter of what the character needs to do and what story they have to tell. And if they come back a few years later and tell me that they've got more to say, as Charlie Bell has done, then I will sit and listen. It's a question of whether or not I can actually do that book.
I know Kate Bendelow has said she's never writing another series ever again after she's done the May of Artin trilogy. And Dorothy Coomson, I asked her, are you going to be writing any more? Because she tends to write standalones, but there's been, 1, maybe 2, the top of my head, follow-ups to different books. And she said, no more, Sam. No, not doing it again. So, everyone's different, aren't they? Donna Morford, just thought I'd pop in and say hi, just back to my home after Newcastle Noir. Does that mean you're back at your hotel? Is that what the inverted commas home is? Hope you've had fun. She was worried about being cold. Just told her to pull a hat over her ears. She'll be fine. Have some gin.
Yeah, I've got some friends who are up for Newcastle Noir. I'm sure it was a brilliant day. I think
it looked amazing.
Actually, Alice Hawkins was up today, I think.
Yeah. So we've only got 5 minutes left. So are you planning any in-person events, or can people buy signed books from you in other ways?
I haven't got any more in-person events this year. However, next year I am on the committee for the Gwyl Crime Cymru Festival in Aberystwyth, which, please God, this year, and COVID and everything else willing, will be in Aberystwyth. And I will be there with hopefully some big names to present to people. So it is an international writers' festival. We have got some good names coming down and getting interested. So hopefully I'll be there in April. Up till then, I've got nothing else planned at the moment, but I've just actually come out of a period of COVID myself. So I've had to turn down a couple of things and I just haven't got around to making contact with anybody about what's going on in next year. So it's all a bit up in the air at the moment. Swansea Waterstones is where I'm usually at, though.
Brilliant. And can people get in touch with you to buy signed copies?
Yeah, if you get in contact with me via my website, which is gailbwilliams.co.uk, You can send me a message there and we can sort something out. I don't have a shop on that particular website at the moment because, frankly, it's my website and I do all the stuff on it and I've got no idea how to create a cart and anything like that. But if you get in contact with me, I'm sure we can figure out something.
And finally, just before we finish, give us a recap of the books that people can actually buy and read so far.
The ones that are out so far are the Locked trilogy, which is Locked Up, Locked In and Locked Down. Then there is The Chair, which is set between South England and the home counties and North Wales. And then there is the Elaine Blake duology, which is Breaking Three and Play the Game, which follows Elaine Blake from being an absolute boring mouse into one hell of a woman by the end of that book.
Right? I mean, you really put her through the ringer.
Oh, yeah. It's no fun if you don't make them jump through hoops, love.
And you absolutely do that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight. Donna said she's staying with an author as you do. Donna always stays with authors when she goes anywhere. She came to an event in Wigan and stayed with an author and went home the next day. She's doing it again. I'm intrigued now. You'll have to message me, tell me who you're staying with. Thank you so much for bearing with us when we had to postpone at short notice and then booking in another date and coming back. I'm really thrilled that we've actually been able to have our conversation.
Well, thank
you so much.
Thanks.